Hi, so today we're going to look at chapters 11 and 12 of Black Beauty before you have a go at a true or false quiz that your teachers will have set as a to-do for you on Purple Mash. So let's have a look at the pages we are looking at. So, chapter 11, Plain Speaking. The longer I lived at Birtwick, the more proud and happy I felt at having such a place. Our master and mistress were respected and beloved by all who knew them. They were good and kind to everybody and everything, not only men and women, but horses and donkeys, dogs and cats, cattle and birds. There was no oppressed or ill-used creature that had not a friend in them, and their servants took the same tone. If any of the village children were known to treat any creature cruelly, they soon heard about it from the hall. The squire and Farmer Grey had worked together, as they said, for more than 20 years, and to get check reins on the cart horses done away with, and in our parts you seldom saw them, and sometimes if mistress had met a heavy laden horse with his head strained up, she would stop the carriage and get out and reason with the driver in her sweet, serious voice and try to show him how foolish and cruel it was. I don't think any man... Oh, that's Meatloaf just leaving. I don't think any man could withstand our mistress. I wish all ladies were like her. Our master too used to come down very heavy sometimes. I remember he was riding me towards home one morning when he saw a powerful man driving toward us in a light pony chaise, with a beautiful little bay pony with slender legs and a high-bred, sensitive head and face. Just as he came to the park gates, the little thing turned towards them. The man, without word or warning, wrenched the creature's head round with such a force and suddenness that he nearly threw it on its haunches. Recovering itself, it was going on when he began to lash it furiously. The pony plunged forwards, but the strong, heavy hand held the pretty creature back with a force almost enough to break its jaw, while the whip still cut into him. It was such a dreadful sight to me, for I knew what fearful pain it gave the delicate little mouth, but master gave me the word and we were up with him in a second. Sawyer, he cried in a stern voice, is that pony made of flesh and blood? Flesh and blood and temper, he said. He's too fond of his own will, and that won't suit me. He spoke as if he was in a strong passion. He was a builder who had often been to the park on business. And do you think, said master sternly, that treatment like this will make him fond of your will? He had no business to make that turn. His road was straight on, said the man roughly. You have often driven that pony up to my place, said master. It only shows that the creature's memory and intelligence. How did he know that you were not going there again? That has little to do with it. I must say, Mr. Sawyer, that a more unmanly, brutal treatment of a little pony it was never my painful lot to witness, and by giving way to such passion you injure your own character as much, nay, more than you injure your horse. And remember, we shall all have to be judged according to our works, whether they be towards man or toward beast. Master rode me home slowly, and I could tell by his voice how the thing had grieved him. He was just as free to speak to gentlemen of his own rank as to those below him. For another day, when we were out, we met Captain Langley, a friend of our master's. He was driving a splendid pair of greys in a kind of break. After a little conversation, the captain said, "What do you think of my new team, Mr. Douglas? You know you are the judge of horses in these parts, and I should like your opinion." The master backed me a little so he could get a good view of them. "They are an uncommonly handsome pair," he said, "and if they are as good as they look, I am sure you need not wish for anything better. But I see you still hold that pet scheme of yours for worrying your horses and lessening their power." "What do you mean?" said the other. The check reins. I know that's a hobby of yours. Well, the fact is, I like to see my horses hold their heads up." "So do I," said the master, "as well as any man, but I don't like to see them held up. That takes all the shine out of it. Now you're a military man, Langley, and no doubt you like to see your regiment look well on parade, heads up and all that. But you would not take much credit for your drill if all your men had their heads tied to a blackboard. It might not be much harm on parade, except to worry and fatigue them, but how would it be in a bayonet charge against the enemy, when they want the free use of every muscle and all their strength thrown forward? I would not give much hope for their chance of victory, and it is just the same with horses. You fret and worry their tempers and decrease their power. You will not let them throw their weight against their work, and so they have to do too much with their joints and muscles, and of course it wears them up faster. You may depend upon it, horses were intended to have their heads free as men's are, and if we could act a little more according to common sense, and a good deal less according to fashion, We should find many things work easier. Besides, you know as well as I that if a horse makes a false step, he has much less chance of recovering himself if his head and neck are fastened back. And now, said the master, laughing, I have given my hobby a good trot out. Can't you make up your mind to mount him too, Captain? Your example would go a long way. I believe you are right in theory, said the other, and that's rather a hard hit about the soldiers, but, well, I'll think about it. And so they parted. Chapter 12. A Stormy Day. One day in the autumn, my master had a long journey to go on business. I was put into the dog cart, and John went with his master. I always liked to go in the dog cart. It was so light, and the high wheels ran along so pleasantly. There had been a great deal of rain, and now the wind was very high and blew the dry leaves across the road in a shower. We went along merrily until we came to the toll bar and the low wooden bridge. The river banks were high, and the bridge, instead of rising, went across just level, so that in the middle, if the river was full, the water wouldn't be nearly up to the woodwork and planks. But as there were good substantial rails on each side, people did not mind it. The man at the gate said the river was rising fast, and he feared it would be a bad night. Many of the meadows were under water, and in one low part of the road the water was halfway up to my knees, but the bottom was good, and the master drove gently, so it was no matter. When we got to the town, of course, I had good bait, but as the master's business engaged him a long time, we did not start for home till rather late in the afternoon. The wind was then much higher, and I heard the master say to John that he had never been out in such a storm, and so I thought as we went along the skirts of the wood, where the great branches were swaying about like twigs, and the rushing sound was terrible. I wish we were well out of this wood, said my master. Yes, sir, said John. It would be rather awkward if one of these branches came down upon us. The words were scarcely out of his mouth when there was a groan and a crack and a splintering sound, and tearing, crashing down amongst the other trees came an oak torn up by the roots, and it fell right across the road just before us. I will never say I was not frightened, for I was. I stopped still, and I believe I trembled. Of course I did not turn around or run away. I was not brought up to that. John jumped out and was in a moment at my head. That was a very near touch, said my master. What's to be done now? Well, sir, we can't drive over that tree, nor yet get round it, but there will be nothing for it but to go back to the 4 crossways, and that will be a good 6 miles before we get round to the wooden bridge again. It will make us late, but the horse is fresh. So back we went and round the crossroads, but by the time we got to the bridge it was very nearly dark. We could just see that the water was over the middle of it, but as that happened sometimes when the floods were out, master did not stop. We were going along at a good pace, but the moment my feet touched the first part of the bridge I felt sure there was something wrong. I dared not go forward, and I made a dead stop. Go on, Beauty, said my master, and he gave me a touch with the whip, but I dare not stir. He gave me a sharp cut. I jumped, but I dare not go forward. There's something wrong, sir, said John, and he sprang out of the dog cart and came to my head and looked all about. He tried to lead me forward. Come on, Beauty, what's the matter? Of course I could not tell him, but I knew very well that the bridge was not safe. Just then, the man at the toll gate on the other side ran out of the house, tossing a torch about like one mad. Hi, 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 hello, stop, he cried. What's the matter? Shouted my master. The bridge is broken in the middle, and part of it is carried away. If you come on, you'll be into the river. Thank God, said my master. You beauty, said John, and took the bridle and gently turned me round to the right-hand road by the riverside. The sun had set some time. The wind seemed to have lulled off after that furious blast which tore up the tree. It grew darker and darker, stiller and stiller. I trotted quietly along, the wheels hardly making a sound on the soft road. For a good while neither master nor John spoke, and then master began in a serious voice. I could not understand much of what they said, but I found that they thought if I had gone on as the master wanted me, most likely the bridge would have given way under us, and horse, chaise, master, and man would have fallen into the river, and as the current was flowing very strongly, there was no light and no help at hand. It was more than likely we should all have been drowned. Master said God had given men reason by which they could find out things for themselves, but he had given animals knowledge which did not depend on reason, and which was much more prompt and perfect in its way, and by which they had often saved the lives of men. John had many stories to tell of dogs and horses and the wonderful things they had done. He thought people did not value their animals half enough, nor make friends of them as they ought to do. I am sure he makes friends of them if ever a man did. At last we came across the park gates and found the gardener looking out for us. He said that mistress had been in a dreadful way ever since dark, fearing some accident had happened, and that she had sent James off on Justice the Roan Cob towards the wooden bridge to make inquiry after us. We saw a light at the hall door and at the upper windows, and as we came up, Mistress ran out saying, "Are you really safe, my dear? Oh, I have been so anxious, fancying all sorts of things. Have you had no accident?" "No, my dear, but if your Black Beauty had not been wiser than we were, we should have been carried down the river at the wooden bridge." I heard no more as they went into the house, and John took me to the stable. Oh, what a good supper he gave me that night! A good bran mash and some crushed beans with my oats, and such a thick bed of straw, and I was glad of it, for I was tired. So what you need to do now is go on to Purple Mash. You need to make sure that you complete the true or false quiz. On the quiz, the answer is not revealed, so it'll tell you that you've got some wrong or some right, but the answer isn't revealed because obviously that's a 50-50 choice, so you'd just be able to change it. So what I want you to do is, if you don't get, say, 8 out of 9, you need to go back through and check it again and see about getting it reset, because I think the questions are all easy enough that you should get at least 8 out of 9. Anyway, we will carry on with chapter 13 tomorrow, and I hope you're all keeping safe.